Stream. All right. Greetings and welcome to another episode of the Unnamed Bracketology Podcast. My name is Kerry Miller, joined as always by my good friend Graham Dorn, who decided to throw on a Shaquille O'Neal jersey today for SEC Friday. So I had to bust out the old Steve Nash jersey. Still got the tags in it, so you can tell how often I've worn that. But I'm here in support of Santa Clara. But Graham, tell me why? Why are we wearing NBA jerseys?
Because it's a beautiful day outside, and I wanted to let the Shaquille O'Neal spirit, that yellow and purple, flow through America right now and talk SEC bracketology the way that it's meant to be talked about. So many good teams ready to dig in, Kerry.
We're flowing through America. What are you even talking about, man? All right. Let me throw up the spreadsheet so you guys don't have to see our ridiculous jerseys anymore. Where we at? Where we at? There's that share button. And there it is. All right, SEC Day. Like I said, we'll just briefly touch on those top six teams who are all mortal locks to dance. I think Kentucky is technically listed at 29, 99.9% on Torvik, but they're in. I was interested in the fact that Alabama seems to have separated from the pack a little bit, at least in terms of WOB. Like I've been having, I mean, obviously we have them, all four of these teams at 16, 17, 18, 19, slightly different order, but I was surprised when going through this morning to see that the Crimson Tide are like that far ahead right now, but also still I can't get them ahead of like a Virginia or anything like that up to any higher than 16. It's kind of a weird, pretty hard line in the sand between Alabama and the other three SEC teams at this point.
Yeah, I think Alabama could potentially take a loss this week and still stay at 16 overall. What Alabama has going for them is not just that WOB score, but they have two road wins versus the field. They beat Illinois in Chicago, very impressive win. And also at or right above them, Florida, I have them at fifth overall now. I think
Yeah.
that's also getting to be a really impressive resume. They have four road wins versus the field, three losses to one seeds. Florida's looking good. Just kind of continuing down here, since we don't really talk about these teams quite as much, since we're so focused on the bubble this time of year. Vandy has, I think you can see from my rankings there, 17, 18, 19, Vandy, Arkansas, Tennessee. I think Vandy's got a pretty nice profile. I don't love it, but what they do have going for them is metrics that are really fantastic. And this committee and the committees in the past few years have been really into metrics. If they like the metric profile of Vanderbilt, it's pretty hard to see why they wouldn't be there. They do have some nice road wins too. Not great road wins, but nice road wins. And they did beat Alabama if that enters into the committee decision. Arkansas is a really interesting team. When I watch them, I feel like they're a four seed. But then
Yeah.
when I look at the profile, I kind of get taken aback by the fact they have no road wins versus the field. They did beat Texas Tech on a neutral court, but that's really the only major big win Arkansas has. So I just don't think they stack up to the four line quite yet. And Tennessee is just taking too many losses. Simply put, they're 5-7 against quadrant one. A lot to really like about the Tennessee profile. Getting swept by Kentucky, though, I think is holding them back a little bit. Imagine what that profile would look like had they won both of those games. Obviously, they didn't. So I think Tennessee well put on the back end of that five line. And then we just spoke of Kentucky. Kentucky has what I think is a pretty nice profile, one that the metrics don't like as much as I like the wins. I know you've talked
Yeah.
about how the committee might treat them based on winning with some players that aren't there anymore. So that could potentially be an issue for Kentucky, but I like the profile. I like the wins. Beating St. John's neutral court really resonates. We already talked about the sweep of Tennessee. Kentucky, for me, I think is a little bit better than the metrics would indicate.
Yeah. I think that's me discounting the St. John's win with Lowe and Quaintance in there is probably the entirety of the gap between us. I do think that win over South Carolina the other night locked them in for good. So, I mean, we'll revisit their where they actually belong on the overall seed list certainly next week when we get into it with the mock and then after the SEC regular season is over. As far as these three teams, Vandy, Arkansas, and Tennessee, I mean, I think I'm I'm with you that Vanderbilt has the best metric profile, but I mean, I got to the point where it's basically just a head-to-head tiebreaker where Vandy lost both games to Arkansas and Tennessee, and Arkansas beat the Volunteers. I think that was even in maybe it was in Little Rock. I forget which way, but that's how I've ended up with those teams separated. I think there's very little separating them, but those are not the interesting teams in the SEC right now. It's these five bubble teams: Georgia, Missouri, A&M, Texas, and Auburn. I've actually added in record and some of their resume data up top. Kind of seeing how the sausage is made. That on Monday we'll be like, what the heck should we talk about this week? And then by Friday, I've got the spreadsheet good to go, and it's all looking better. So we end up being more in depth on the SEC than the ACC pretty much every week. But um, Missouri, you want to start there because I have them the highest. We were talking about them earlier today. That's a team who I want to be higher than the metrics say they should. If you take the average of their six metrics and just, if that's your sorting metric, as I do usually, and then I move things around from there, they would be 41st overall. But I was tempted to put them on the 8 line at 31. I ended up with them at 33, with them at 37. Either way, they're on that like 9-10 cut line. I think their wins are just too good and their losses are not that all like I think they have four losses to non-tournament teams, but they're all quad two, nothing that rises to the level of anything that, Santa Clara or TCU did wrong. So I feel like they're pretty comfortably in, even though the metrics don't necessarily reflect that. If they do what we have here, if they win at Mississippi State, lose at Oklahoma, lose the home finale against Arkansas, they would have a 1.38 WOB, assuming there's not a random subtraction of zero point 0.3 WOB overnight at any point in the process, but they would be in relatively good shape, even with a 1-2 finish. But I think they would have work to do in the SEC tournament with a 1-2 finish. What do you say?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and very impressed by Missouri's profile when you just look at it. You don't look at the metrics, you just look at who they played, where they played, and how they did. I think Missouri does really well in that regard. You mentioned the questionable metrics. I think that could come back to bite them, but they have five really good wins. And that's something that teams around the bubble don't have. So I think Missouri's even a little bit above the bubble right now. I think they really are in that good shape, as you mentioned. Probably in the tournament if they just win two of the next four. And I don't really care which two of the next four it is. That means, one of these three and the first SEC tournament game, or two of these three lose the first SEC tournament game, however you want to split it up. If they win
Yeah.
two of the next four, I think they're in. If they lose three of the next four, it's going to be really close. But I actually still tend to think they probably get in that scenario just because their wins are so much better than what teams around the bubble are bringing. If it's them versus Ohio State, why would you want
Oh
to
yeah.
get in? So I tend to think Missouri probably just needs one of the next four, but two should make it nice and easy.
Now that I'm actually looking at their profile, the wins: home against Florida, at Kentucky, at Texas A&M, home against Vanderbilt, home against Tennessee, home against Auburn. No losses outside of Quad 2A. So they're 58th in the net. That's the only metric that like particularly hates them. Ken Palm doesn't love them either. I think they're 51st. So I think they're going to be this year's team that like everybody gravitates to, that doesn't really follow bracketology. They're like, why would the 58th best team be in? Like, well, look at their wins and they're not bad losses, and there you go. So I think Missouri's closing in on a lock. Yeah, I think if they win tomorrow at Mississippi State, it's going to be really hard for them to be left out, unless, like you said, they pick up a bad loss in the SEC tournament or something. Then it becomes a new bit of calculus to consider. Georgia, we have just slightly behind Missouri at 36 and a half. I do want to say, I think I'm higher than you on all of these teams except for Texas, who we both have at 43 overall. So these averages, I think 36 and a half, like you probably have them at 38 and I have them at 35 or something like that. So I'm a little more convinced in an 11 bid SEC than Graham is, but we both think it is certainly possible. But Georgia, again, if they take care of business against Mississippi State, if they win the home game against South Carolina, I think they are pretty convincingly in. Where are they at? Their little nitty gritty here. They are 33rd in the net. Also with a road win over Kentucky, home win over Arkansas, road win over Missouri, home wins over Auburn and Texas. So that's 5 wins over the projected field. Granted, 3 of those teams are in this bubble conversation. A home loss to Ole Miss is really the only particularly damning loss they suffered. Do you think? I think the 77.4% on Missouri is way too low. 97.2% on Georgia feels more accurate. They just need to not screw up. Maybe it's more like 90%, but
I think it's a little bit closer to 90%. I wouldn't put them at 97%. Um, Mainly because you look at that, you said don't screw up, right? They could lose to Alabama. That's not a screw up. They lose to Mississippi State. That's not really that much of a screw up either,
yeah.
right?
And now
Like
then
all of a
they drop
sudden,
to
you're in
point
danger if
eight.
that happens. I think they need to win 2 of those 3, however they get them, because if they don't, there's a lot of what Georgia did in the non-conference that the committee is going to hate. So if
Yeah.
they get themselves under the hood, the committee's not going to like what they see with Georgia, in my opinion. The one saving grace may be winning at Kentucky. That could potentially be a difference maker if they get on the bubble. But I personally believe, considering what they did in the non-conference portion of the season, they probably need to win 2 of these 3, or they need to do some damage in the SEC tournament.
They're according to Warren Nolan, their net non-conference strength of schedule rank is 301st, which is really bad. I mean, it's not 350, but we've talked about it before, or at least I've talked about it on Twitter with some people that a lot of teams this year have bad Ken Palm non-conference strength of schedules, but the net doesn't hate them. So that's not going to matter. Ken Palm non-conference strength of schedule isn't on the team sheets. So I think Georgia might have one of the worst non-conference strength outside of Miami, Ohio, among teams that could tentatively be on the bubble. So that could be ding them for sure. I mean, they went 12-1, but their best wins were over Cincinnati and Florida State. So I think you got a point there. If they definitely if they lose to Mississippi State, it becomes a problem. I think if they go 2-1, they're fine though. Texas A&M also listed at 97%. I think that's cuckoo bananas. Just in they have to win all 3 of these games just to get to a 2.56 wob, and I'm not convinced they win 2 of those 3 games, let alone all 3. Ken Pum does say each individual one they're supposed to win, but I think overall, like the over under is probably 1.5, and I don't know which way I would lean on that. What do you think? I mean, if they win all 3, yeah, they're in. 2-1, what do you think? Let's say they lose the Kentucky game.
I think they're still probably in that scenario. And the reason why is I think the single most important game left in the college basketball season, in the regular season, is Texas A&M. I think the winner of that game is probably dancing. The loser's probably not dancing. Not saying that, it's definitive one way or the other. Both teams still have 2 remaining regular season games after that, conference tournament after that. But it really feels like a swing game for both teams that their season could come down to what happens in College Station in that one.
I am concerned about A&M's lack of quality wins. If you just look at the buckets, they look fine. They have 3 quad 1A wins. That's really good compared to most of the bubble, but it's at Auburn, at Georgia, at Texas, all 3 teams who are right here on this list as bubble teams. Their 4th best win is at Oklahoma. Now that is a lot of ats. 4 road quad 1 wins is going to carry a lot of weight, but where's that really marquee win? If, as you so eloquently put it, as I say eloquently, where's the irony in that? Once they go under the hood and really inspect that resume, if they're right there on the bubble and like all they've done is beat other bubble teams, I don't know. I think if they go 2-1, it's questionable, even though that would put their WOB at around a 1.6. I think they probably need at least 3 wins down the stretch. Could they go 2-1 and then immediately lose to, an Ole Miss or an LSU in the conference tournament? Things get iffy in a hurry because they have two losses to teams not projected to dance. Maybe just one. Trying to look through their schedule. At Oklahoma State, that might be the only one. So it's mostly rooted in it's clean. If you just look at the metrics, the buckets and everything, yeah. But if you really dig into it, it's not it's not great. And the committee does historically hate Texas A&M for some reason. I don't know what they did to somebody on the committee in years past, but A&M always seems to be underseeded a little bit, in my opinion. I don't know.
Well, the other
Uh,
thing I think is relevant to Texas A&M is what they did. We just mentioned Georgia out of conference, and Georgia was a lack of scheduling. Texas A&M, it's the opposite issue. They scheduled some pretty tough games, not elite tough, but pretty tough games. They lost at home to UCF. They lost to SMU on a neutral court. Like they didn't actually win these games out of conference. And why I think that's more problematic than the other way around, I actually kind of feel like it would be better if you're on the bubble and you can point to what you did out of conference as a separator. I think if
hmm,
they go under the hood, the committee might look at it and be like, I don't know that we need this many SEC teams in. Look what Texas A&M did out of conference. Maybe the whole conference is slightly overrated at the bubble. Maybe Texas A&M shouldn't be in this field. And I think that could be a legitimate discussion at that point. If you look at them not struggling out of conference and then beating all the bubble teams in the SEC, maybe you just don't need that many SEC teams in the tournament.
yeah. And even their non-conference strength schedule 261. To your point, they lost their three toughest games. Just like Georgia, their best win was against Florida State or at Pitt, which is not saying anything this year. And their third best win was a home game against Montana. Fourth best, a home game against Northwestern State. I mean, it's bad. They were not even like in the conversation when SEC play started, and then they started out whatever 7-1. They were in first place for a while, and they've just kind of hung around since then. I don't think they've done much in the last month really to prove that they belong. So I think they need to finish strong. I think 97.3% is wildly aggressive. I'm starting to wonder if I mistyped Missouri and Texas A&M. I don't know. Texas and Auburn, obviously the two bubbliest of these bubble teams. I'll let you decide which one you want to start on. You can just rail on one of them.
Well, I mean, let's go to Texas. I already talked about how I think that's the biggest game remaining in the regular season. At Arkansas versus Oklahoma, lots of opportunity. Obviously Oklahoma doesn't fall into that bucket, but going to Texas A&M, going to Arkansas, either one of those games will really increase the profile significantly. And let's remember, Texas already went to Missouri and got a victory there, which for as secure as we feel like Missouri is, it's a road win versus the tournament team right there. So I feel pretty good about Texas making the field if they win two of those three. If it's at Arkansas and at Texas A&M, I feel really good about it. But I think 2 out of 3, and Texas should be okay.
Yeah, so they are projected to lose these next two. That would drop their WOB to 0.46, assuming a season-ending home win over Oklahoma. And I don't think that's going to do it. They would be 17-13. I assume they have a they beat Chaminade in the Maui Invitational, so that's why they're short of 31 wins against Quad One or against Division One. But they would be 17-13. A bad home loss to Mississippi State. I mean, it's not that bad, but it's Quad Three. In this scenario, they will have been swept by Texas A&M if they lose that game. They also have that loss to Arizona State. Those are their only losses outside of Quad 1A, though. So there's that going for them. But they're like Ohio State, but they did pick up one win over Alabama. I mean, that's a big road win. That helps, but they just the sheer volume of losses, and if you only have that one particularly great win, I don't know if that gets you there. But if they do, if they beat Texas A&M, I mean, that probably puts them ahead of the Aggies. So I think I'm with you. That's probably the most important, as far as the bubble is concerned, most important individual game left in the entire season. Because I think if they go 2-1, they're probably good.
Yeah.
At Texas A&M would be a borderline Quad 1A result. It would be their sixth Quad 1 win. And again, only a couple of losses outside of Quad 1A.
The
Yeah,
one problem for
two
Texas
and
in
one.
that scenario, I think, is the fact that they're only 9-11 against quads 1 through 3 right now. So what I mean
Hmm.
by that is you talk about the top of the resume. They've got some quadrant 1 wins. They've got some nice wins, but they don't have much depth on it. So that's where I think winning that either Texas A&M or Arkansas on the road getting one more big win they can sell the committee on. If it's Texas A&M, it's we went to Texas A&M's place when we had to have it. We got it. We've got a lot of quad one wins. If it's Arkansas, it's like, hey, we just picked up an elite win to finish the season. Even if we lost Texas A&M, this is enough. If we moved out, we're back in. I feel good about Texas if they get two of those three, but I do think the lack of resume depth could really come back to haunt them.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, as much as we've been railing on Indiana's, 4-11 record versus quads 1 and 2, 10-11 against the top three quads or whatever they would be at that point. I guess 11-12 if they're 9-11 right now. I mean, that it's not good. You don't want to be sub 500 against the top three quads. Historically, that wasn't great, but what were they last year that they snuck in 10-15 or something?
I thought it was 10-15. Yeah. Because I think they ended up putting up 7 wins in quad 4, if I remember right. But I don't know if that adds up. Were they 7? Yeah, they were 17-15. No, they weren't 17-15, were they?
I don't know. We're going off
We'll
the
have to
cuff
look it
here.
up. Either way, it was not good last year, and they could be worse this year. That's the story.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the biggest bubble, most annoying bubble team of them all, Auburn, who, I mean, metrically, they are way ahead of Texas. They are ahead of Texas A&M. They're right there with Georgia and Missouri, but they have the 13 total losses. And I think, is it Georgia in 2001 was the most recent team to get in with at 2 games above 500. So if they were to go 1-2 down the stretch and then win, or if they go 2-1 and then immediately lose in the SEC tournament, or if they go 1-2 and then 1-1 in the tournament, whatever, that's where they would be, 2 games above 500. I don't know if this path is enough. Like we've been saying for a while, if they get to 18-15, that makes it more stomachable. But I mean, home wins over Ole Miss and LSU, they don't do anything to actually help the resume. And if they're right now projected for Dayton or just barely above Dayton, as most people have them, like they need to help themselves out some beyond just adding to the win total. So I'm no longer convinced that 2-1 gets them there. And now seeing that they would only have a WOB of 1.18, and this probably gets them to like the 10 or the 11 seed in the SEC tournament, which means an opener on, I guess it would be on Tuesday against like a South Carolina or something. Like that's another game that's just, it's not going to help the resume. You just have to not lose it. I don't know. I'm getting less and less convinced that Auburn needs to be in, even though the bubble is getting uglier every day.
Yeah, I think what could help Auburn is St. John's seems to be propping up the whole SEC. That win that Auburn got over St. John's could be really vital when the selection committee goes back. We talked about how if they look at Georgia, they might not see anything out of conference. If they look at Texas A&M, they might not see anything out of conference. Auburn scheduled aggressively, and they did get St. John's, and they have one of the best wins in all of college basketball when they went to Gainesville and beat Florida. Now, the problem with Auburn is we just talked about Texas not having resume depth. All I hear about is Auburn has the best schedule. It's the greatest schedule. And I'm like, okay, but their 10th best win this year per WOB is Merrimack at home. Are we really that convinced that Auburn deserves a spot in the field? Like, I don't care how hard your schedule is. If Merrimack is your 10th best win of the year and you're playing out of the SEC, you need to do more. I think this is probably trouble for Auburn headed into the SEC tournament if that's what they're looking like. If they go 2-2, I think they're probably out, and I think they probably deserve to be out at that point.
Listen, I don't know why you got to throw shade at a 20-win MAC team. Mary Mack is good. No, I do love Kavere Kennedy. I hope they make the tournament, and he could be a fun player to watch. But yeah, it's really just the number of losses. That's the only reason you can really poke holes in Auburn's resume. Like if you just drill down to what they've accomplished, and you can argue, yeah, they've played 17 games or something against tournament caliber teams, but they won 6 of them. That's something. It's not nothing. There's not a lot of other teams on the bubble who have done that, but it's just a question of whether or not they're going to fall to, something in 15, something in 16, where they end up in that regard. But it's four teams in tournament history have gotten at large with 15 losses, and all four of them were SEC teams. And I think all four of them were either 9 seeds or 10 seeds. It's like, for whatever reason, there's always an SEC team that puts together this really, really strong schedule. And, their net strength of schedule overall, number one in the nation, non-conference, number 16 in the nation. We were just talking about teams in the 260s and the 300s. So I think that buys them, 4 or 5 extra losses compared to a Georgia or Missouri. But yeah, I mean, you made the point earlier. Like, if you're comparing Missouri to Ohio State, if you're comparing Auburn to Ohio State, like, at least they got some wins. At some point, that's got to matter, and I
Yeah, I
think
think
that keeps them in.
I agree with you. It really depends on what their SEC tournament result is in that scenario. Who are they playing? How did that game go? We've talked about it before. The committee really loves to pick on teams who lose that first game. If the committee just happens to be talking about them at that time, oh, I'm eating ice cream and look at Auburn. They're getting smoked by Ole Miss. Are we sure we want to put a 17 and 15 team in the tournament that can't even hang with Ole Miss? Like, I mean, these are real things that happen. If they are watching and they see, let's say they lose two of these three, but then that first SEC tournament game, they're putting it on Ole Miss by 35. Committee might be like, say they're a good basketball team, just tough schedule. If they were playing teams like Ole Miss all year, they'd be whooping up on them. These are real conversations I think that can come up. So for Auburn, if they go 2-1, let's see how they do in the SEC tournament. That's probably what will ultimately get them in or get them out at that point.
I love how many of these decisions we assume are taking place outside of the actual war room over a ice cream cone, but it's probably true. I don't know. Got a couple of questions in the chat before we wrap up. Playing Devil's Advocate Pod said, I think Mizzou is in great shape with what the chairman emphasized with wins above bubble and best wins. Yeah, I think that's where it's at. They've got some great wins. They have 4 fewer losses than Auburn and no particularly bad losses. I'm like I said, I wanted to have Missouri as an 8 seed today, and I think they're pretty comfortably in. Uh, David Nagel, 1991 or 1999. Boy, I cannot read today. I think Auburn and Texas are probably doomed if they close 1 and 2, especially Auburn. I think I would agree. And he pointed out the SEC teams that did get in with 15 losses. Yeah, if let's say if they both end up going I mean, especially Auburn, they would drop to smack dab on the bubble there. But yeah, they'd both be below a .5 WOB heading into the SEC tournament, and we've already kind of decided that a WOB of 1 is going to be almost a prerequisite for consideration this year, the way the wins above bubble numbers seem to be shaking out. Any last second thoughts from you, Graham, or do you want to call your shot on the bubble game of the season here? Who's going to win, Texas or Texas A&M?
I think the Aggies are going to win. And I will say one caveat to that one number we've been talking about. We don't know if the committee, or not the committee, the NCAA, whoever is messing with WOB and putting those calculations in, we don't know if they're just going to reprogram it again. All of a sudden, it's like, instead of needing to reach 1, maybe you need to reach like 0.2. We don't know. So like there is a fair amount of WOB guessing that we're doing here. We can predict what everybody looks like in comparison to each other.
Yeah.
But we don't know that final number. That could just drop instantly. And all of a sudden, maybe minus 0.04 is getting you into the tournament.
All right. That's conspiracy theory, Graham Doran, with you here. I still think it's just something along the cut line changed. And that's why everybody budged. And usually I'm the conspiracy theorist of us. So I don't know. I want to believe the math. So we'll see. But that'll wrap us up. We've gone quite on long enough. We got another great game tonight. Michigan, that's at Illinois, and also Miami, Ohio, trying to improve to 29-0 against the Western Michigan Broncos. Yes, I think I got the mascot right there. And we've got Sun Belt Carnage, or if you're into that, we can get like a 7-way tie for the Stairway to Seven. But till next time, take care and enjoy the hoops.